To understand how cities work today, it's necessary to take a close look at the peripheral areas of large metropolises. In the context of the Barbosa Cities channel, focused on simulation and urban analysis, the suburb is not just a place with scattered houses. It is the result of centuries of political decisions, economic interests, and the human desire for an ideal place to live. This video breaks down the phenomenon of suburbanization, from its origins in the industrial era to the most modern proposals for urban transformation. The idea is simple but powerful. The way we design our cities directly shapes people's lives and even the economic health of a country. Welcome to the Barbosa Cities channel. Leave a like here at the beginning of the video and check that you're subscribed. And also, thank you very much. It's really important. Hype it up if you have the option to hype it. This will boost this video to the top of the YouTube algorithm. It will reach more people and who knows, maybe even future residents here in Vale Central, our city that was planned and designed from scratch. Let's go, guys. Let's solve this problem now at the corner of our suburb. I'm going to work on these two side blocks here first because they're easier to solve. After all, in them, we don't have that gap in the middle of the highway. To start, I'm going to make the main streets, which will follow the pattern of main streets that we've already established. Here in the other super blocks, which are these central streets, we usually don't subdivide this corridor into lots. But since this is going to be the suburbs, right, I'm going to end up putting streets now in these central strips here that form this plus sign. The layout is going to be a little different. Now I'm going to make streets here that run alongside the avenues. Actually, they're parallel to the avenues. So look, I made a square here that's parallel, and then another square inside here that's also parallel. And finally, one more here. And the cool thing is that all of them are keeping the same distance. Look, exactly 2 units here from one block to another. And that's how it goes all the way to the end. At these 2 corners here, look, I'm going to use roundabouts at these intersections. There's no need for a very large radius. I think it's great here, and I'll go ahead and draw this circle. This avenue obviously will continue this way and also this way. On the other side here, right, at this intersection, the same procedure. See, look, now roundabouts here on both corners. We just need to customize it by adjusting the nodes here and also, right, the road markings here on the asphalt. There's already a template here ready to be applied to these roundabouts. And there you go. Look how it turns out, right? Indicating that whoever is in the roundabout already has the right of way. Whoever is entering the roundabout has to wait for a safe gap. Well, that's it. Later, I want to decide from here how the layout of the blocks will look. I think this street here can intersect with the avenues here. After all, it will be right in between the roundabout and the next intersection. So this applies here in this section as well. And here, man, it's going to be close to our Megazord intersection, right? I don't think it's going to work to connect here because it's going to be a mess here with too many roads at the same spot. And it's the same thing here in this corner. So what I'm going to do is put in a pedestrian path, just to make life easier for those who aren't driving, right? If someone is here, they won't have to walk all the way around the next block, which is a little far away. So I'll just connect it here with the roads in the back. Well, up here we can connect, right? We've been making this connection here. And down here we can also connect the neighborhood streets to the avenues. Well, in this scenario here, I think I'll prioritize horizontal blocks, right, here on this side. So I can remove these streets here. And down here, right, the blocks, these ones are actually horizontal. And here on the side, look, vertical blocks. But how did the suburbs come about? The suburbs grew mainly during the 19th and 20th centuries. This happened for 2 main reasons: advances in transportation and changes in the global economy. Before, cities were compact, but with the advent of trains and later cars, it became possible to live far from work and commute daily. This changed everything. In the United States, after World War II, the suburbs boomed. The government encouraged this model. People wanted to escape the pollution of industrial centers, and the famous American dream reinforced the idea of owning a home far from the city. In Brazil, the path was different. Here, the growth of the suburbs is linked to industrialization, especially during the Vargas era, but unlike in the United States, the Brazilian suburb did not emerge as a lifestyle choice, but rather as a necessity. At the beginning of the 20th century in Rio de Janeiro, for example, the downtown area was beautiful and well-maintained, while the suburbs were neglected, full of problems, and practically abandoned. These were areas where the working class lived without adequate infrastructure. This created a clear division. Downtown had the services, power, and structure. The countryside, production, and the economy. And in the middle of all this, the suburbs became known for people who live far away and work downtown. And this daily movement became known as commuting. Because you function like a pendulum. You're at home in the suburbs, you have to go downtown to work, and then come back. And you do this every day. But we have several types of suburbs, and not all of them are the same. There are different models, each with its own impact on people and on city management. The main ones are the traditional residential suburb, which consists of detached houses, cul-de-sacs, and little traffic. It seems peaceful, but using a car for everything is mandatory. And as we've seen in previous episodes, this brings a lot of other problems. We have the post-suburb, also known as Edge City, which are areas that started out residential but gained malls, offices, and services. They created new urban centers, but there's still a heavy dependence on cars because usually these are services offered in neighborhoods that rely on cars. You go to the mall by car, there's a huge parking lot, fast food, you go to the drive-thru, so even then it still creates this isolation. Several centers spread throughout the city, each with its own function. Small urban centers around the main center. Here in Brazil, we usually say largo, the largo of the neighborhood, which is a little center in the neighborhood, especially when these centers are kind of specialized. For example, if you have a neighborhood that's specialized in fabric, tailoring, fashion, and it's famous for that. I'll use an example here from São Paulo in Braz. People go to Braz a lot to shop. So everyone in the city has to go there because that's the city's fabric hub. But the people who live there don't just live off fabric, they need other goods and services, which that neighborhood doesn't have because that neighborhood only has one specialization. So the people who are there also need to leave. And this keeps creating that back and forth commuting pattern. It works well economically, but it can make social integration harder. And we also have public outskirts, planned and spontaneous outskirts. The planned ones are gated communities with rigid zoning, usually for the upper class who will stay there behind walls with a security booth controlling who comes in and who goes out, which also doesn't interact or communicate with the surrounding neighborhoods. It's literally a bubble where you'll also need a car for everything. And we also have the spontaneous outskirts, which are informal settlements common in emerging countries with little infrastructure, like here in Brazil. And then we want the suburbs to have their own services, so they're not specialized in just one type of service. For example, this neighborhood specializes in clothing stores. Everyone who wants clothes will have to come here to buy them, and then the people from here who need another service have to leave. So the idea is that it should offer multiple services. That's why in each of these super blocks in the suburbs, to reduce this negative effect, I'm going to create some commercial centers here, okay? And here on the sides, I think it's also welcome, so it really stays inside the super block. So here, a pedestrian street, and here there will be a mixed use area, okay? So here we will have commerce, housing, offices, and we will provide various types of services that the population may need. Here in the middle, I'm going to replicate an idea that I tried to do in the more central super blocks, which didn't work out because I put the diagonal avenue, right? Cutting through the super blocks, a small square in the center. I'm going to create some small loops here, like this, and I'm going to curve them here so we can get more park and square space. This will be in all 4 corners. Well, since we want to make this a friendly and walkable area for pedestrians, of course we're going to take some measures to signal that. Crosswalks are good, but the game generates a lot of them, right? So I'm going to remove some here. I'll leave these on the corner, okay? There you go. It looks much cleaner now, and we still kept plenty of crosswalks. And remember how we already used the color yellow to indicate pedestrian priority? So I'm going to use it here. Actually, it's not applying correctly because here I'm going to end up narrowing or increasing the width of the street. You see? Widen the sidewalk and narrow the space for cars, especially at these corners, right? These are going to be the main pedestrian crossing points. So we make it narrower. And then, yes, you apply the signage here to force the driver to pay more attention and slow down. And that's it. Since we narrowed the path here at these ramps, here at the intersection, I'm also going to add markings to improve pedestrian safety and also indicate what the driver can or cannot do. For example, since this corner here is curved, right? It indicates that the driver can turn this way, but not this way, right? Here we have a sharper corner that already indicates that turning in this direction isn't possible, or the driver can go straight. And I'll also apply this to the other corners. And since we're going to have a parking space here in the middle, right? I'll leave it here, look, dotted, dashed, to indicate that it's a parking space. And we end up with a road like this. Well marked, very safe. And that central little square becomes a nice place for people to relax. I want to know your opinion. Did you like the signage here? Do you think it's a welcome addition? So, guys, I'm going to have to repeat this same process on this other side as well. And that's it, guys. The other side is done as a mirror image, okay? I also put signage on the asphalt. And here it would be interesting, right, for us to also continue the pedestrian promenade, right, with the crosswalk. So, look, also doing the same painting scheme here, see, to keep it going. Here, too, you see connecting one end to the other. And that's how it turned out. I also organized the one-way traffic scheme here. So you can take a look at it if you want. You can pause if you want. And now, right, we're getting to the most complicated part, which is this one, okay? Throughout all the super blocks, right, this super block has been a lot of work, you know, because it has this road cutting through the middle all the way to the center. So we always had to pay special attention to this super block that has the highway. And well, a lot of people commented, Barboza, make a different layout. Put a curve there to break up this grid. And man, after establishing a grid like this, starting to add curves gets really complicated, especially when it comes to the overall harmony and look of it. But then looking at the highway here, I noticed that this part here, it's curved. So I thought, man, what if I curve the avenue here as well? Then I'll move it back. I'll also remove the service road here so we have a nice space to work with, and make this avenue curve following the bend. The curve here on the highway, so it would start here from this roundabout and follow a perfect curve all the way to the next roundabout, like this, right? And here we get, look, a perfect parallel between the Contorno Highway and this avenue here. And then the streets in this neighborhood here would also be curved, connecting these corners here with these corners on the other side. Mainly, right, these two streets that are the main streets of the centers. So I would bring this street here up to here in a perfect curve, and the other one in the opposite direction up to here in a perfect curve. This one here, I can still connect from one side to the other, right? But this one here, look, it won't be possible, especially because we have our big intersection here, so it would be a bit complicated, but we get 3 crossings here. After that, right, I go back to working here with the service road, already making the connection on these curved streets until it meets up here with the avenue. I should turn these crossings into overpasses as well as the avenue here too. And raise it up a little here, right? So the parapet, the railing of the quay here, doesn't end up slanted like this. And that's fine. Look, a little higher here, but that's not a problem. And we end up with about half a super block here. I think 66.6% of the super block. And it stays parallel here, look, with the curve of the highway. And now we have to fill in the inside of this super block. I'm thinking about creating parallel streets here, look, to the avenue, more or less like this. So I would also leave this space here of 2 units inside the block and create this parallel here. Look, up to, let me see. Here I won't connect because it'll be too close to this roundabout, but the next street here can be connected. Also make another road parallel to the service road we have here, which can also help us fill in the interior of this neighborhood. And then everything I do on one side, right, I have to do on the other side as well to mirror it. Okay, it's mirrored. I think to help fill these big spaces here, we could work with one more curve. If from here to here is 880, half of that is 440. Here, look, so I could pull from here to the other side, one more curve. See? Add another street here to help fill the block. Look here too, and down here as well. There, it's done now, see? It helped to fill it in. We got a few more curves. And now I'm going to continue with these streets parallel to the avenues. So we have this street parallel to this avenue, and I'm going to make another one here to the side. Also keeping the same distance here, see? And man, I'm not going to bring it over here because on this side, we're also going to have a parallel one. It's going to come over here, and they'll be really close together. They'll end here, but they can connect to the avenue here. Actually, I even prefer that this one connects instead of that one. And then I'll repeat the process here on this side. All right, guys. Look, it turned out kind of similar here. It reminds me of a Christmas tree. 2 Christmas trees here. What do you guys think? I even think these intersections here are too much. I'll remove them and leave only the main streets here on both sides. And also to follow that same logic of creating leisure and commercial spaces, I'm going to turn this into a little square. And here, another little square. I believe we can make a pedestrian street here too and turn it into a more commercial area. And we're also creating these small hubs of diversity here in the suburb with curved streets, right? In this space, we can fill it in with concrete here as well. And we can also mark it here with paint on the asphalt. And this is an area where pedestrians have priority, all right? And so, man, this is how the corner of our suburb turned out. Our corner of the planned core. And obviously I've already applied this formula to all 4 corners here, and man, that's how it is now. It's even hard to see because our whole planned core is already so big. We have to zoom out a lot, right? It gets a little hard to visualize, but if you look, there are still 4 super blocks missing here, 4 more super blocks here, here, and here, right? For us to complete this whole area, was the suburb necessary? That's an important question. Urban growth is inevitable, but the current suburban model, separated, spread out, and car-dependent, is now seen as a planning mistake. This model arose from real estate speculation, outdated zoning laws, and the prohibition of mixed use, living but also working and shopping in the same place. And that resulted in a city that grows outward, instead of growing in a smarter and more compact way. And the problems of urban sprawl, man, are huge. And they go way beyond just the appearance of the city. There's the economic problem because maintaining infrastructure in spread out areas is very expensive. Providing water, electricity, paved roads, and public services costs a lot more than in dense areas, which require less sprawl to serve more people. In the suburbs, we need long sewage lines and wiring to serve fewer people. And fewer people means fewer people paying taxes, that is, contributing to the city's public coffers. Physical and mental health are also affected. Poorly planned cities create what is known as an anxious city. Stress is constant. There's a lot of noise, a lack of green areas, and those who live far away and face long commutes are at greater risk of depression and anxiety, as well as walking less. People are more sedentary, which increases diseases like diabetes and hypertension. This affects women even more because of the burden of the double shift. The environment also suffers a lot from this sprawl, which destroys natural areas, invades productive land, increases the risk of flooding, and makes the soil impermeable. And it also reduces access to green areas, which are essential for well-being and mental health. Some cities show exactly what goes wrong when planning fails. Hudson and Phoenix in the United States, which are often mentioned here,
série de coisas que deram erradas,
show a total dependence on cars. They are extremely sprawling cities with very expensive infrastructure. The banlieues of Paris are another example. They are large housing complexes that became isolated areas with concentrated poverty and social conflicts, where the intention was to provide housing. But because they are far from everything, they ended up bringing these problems as well, from the lack of social and economic connectivity with the rest of the city. Here in Brazil, we have many examples of peripheral areas. But to talk about a planned city like Brasilia, which, even though it was planned, became a city dependent on cars with unorganized growth around it. So if you look outside the Plano Piloto, we have outskirts that are constantly expanding even today. And cities that aren't planned have this problem too. In Sao Paulo, which grew chaotically, mobility is bad, and there's a high level of dissatisfaction. 60% of the residents say they would leave the city if they could. So if you live in the outskirts, whether it's the east side, south side, or north side of Sao Paulo, you know what I'm talking about. This means a long commute to the center where you go to shop, to hang out, to work. How can we fix this? The solution isn't to destroy the suburbs, it's to transform them. The key concept is suburban retrofit, which is nothing more than reusing underutilized areas like abandoned malls, parking lots, industrial zones, and turning them into vibrant mixed-use neighborhoods. And now I'll give you examples that worked. We've already talked about Paris here, the 15-minute city where you have everything you need within 15 minutes on foot or by bike. We have the example of Lancaster Boulevard in California. They reduced the number of lanes for cars, and they created social spaces with a local economy that ended up growing. And this can also be aligned with public transportation. Citing Curitiba once again, which had organized growth along BRT transport corridors, with planned density and mixed use along these lines. But Barbosa, does the ideal suburb exist? Yes, there is a better model, based on new urbanism. The idea is simple: to create neighborhoods that function as complete communities. And the main pillars of this are walkability, where you have everything accessible on foot, with safe and pleasant streets, mixed land use as well, with businesses, services, and housing all in the same place. And the issue of transportation also needs to be considered. To reduce dependence on cars, we need better public transportation. Housing should be diverse, different types of housing, for different incomes. And lifestyles are also very important. And notice how this goes completely against what we've been seeing, like gated community models, for example, where everyone is upper middle income, or informal settlements, the favelas, where incomes are generally lower middle. Did you notice that there's a big area left over here in the corners? Between the curved avenue and the curve of the marginal highway of the ring road. This space here is what I intend to use for industry. So we're going to have industry here. We're going to have industry here in this corner. Industry here and industry here. And this space that's left over here, it will all be suburbia. I'll probably replicate this model here. It's a superblock suburb model with mixed use here near the center on these well-marked pedestrian streets. So maybe now would be the time. Start extending these avenues here all the way to the other side, and we can settle it here once and for all. All these spaces of the superblocks, and see here what the edge of our city is going to be. More or less like this. Here will be an underground highway, so it's not an avenue. There's no need for a crossing here. But look at this, how it's going to end up here. This part is really close here, right next to the highway. My idea now, in fact, is to use Move It. To make this fit exactly, I hold down the Alt key here, and it gives a little snap here so I can fit it in perfectly here, in the correct position. So it ends up being relatively easy, although it's not as easy as it looks, because then I have to keep adjusting here. the missing pieces, here in the fitting, it won't work very well. Because we have this square park here at the intersection, I'm going to have to take it from here, from copy and paste, this little piece here, to be able to fit it here without things overlapping each other. And then just keep going here. All the reconnections here. Anyway, it's a bit of work, but it's already a huge help that Move It gives. We get when we use this copy-paste function here. I'll do everything and come back after the cut for you. Hey guys, I was getting ready too. A very beautiful cutscene. And it turns out there was an unexpected error. Well, if you're a Cities Skylines player, if you already have some experience with the game, if you're more of a veteran, you know that Cities Skylines 1, there are limits to pretty much everything. Node limit, segment limit. Each of these intersections here, this little dot here, is a node. This here is the road segment. There's a tree limit. There's a limit for transport lines. And I've been concerned about this since the beginning of the series, so we wouldn't reach that limit. And it turns out we haven't reached it. The node limit. I even subscribed to this mod here. It shows the limits. The node limit is still fine. We're still at 43%. In other words, we've used half of what the game supports. What got us was this one. Zone blocks. 86% already used, which are our zoning areas here. When I come here to zone something, it's these little blocks. Each of these little blocks, the game counts. And I've reached its limit. When I was building this suburb here, this part of the suburb, I think I was missing about 4 super blocks. And it wasn't zoning anymore. All the streets, they were like this. Wanna see? With no zoning at all. And then you couldn't even put things here. Placing buildings by hand doesn't work. The game doesn't recognize it as a street if there's no zoning. And then, man, I said, now what? What am I going to do? I need to finish this city, the design of this city. And you can see that I solved it because now we're at 86% usage. This had reached 100%. I managed to reduce it by 14% and finish our entire suburb. Here in all 4 corners of the map, everything is finished. How did I do that? I removed zoning. Where it came from doesn't matter to me, in other words. Here inside the Manual Avenue, there was zoning. And then I came on both lanes of the Beltway Avenue. It was like that. There was zoning here in this corner, so I put it here. Toggle zoning. And I left it to have zoning only on the right side. Then I started removing it. And I did this everywhere. Not just the Beltway Avenue, but also here inside the intersections. I even forgot a few pieces here because, man, it was a lot of work. It really was a huge amount of work having to keep changing one thing, removing one, putting the other side, switching the segments here. See? Even this little piece here is already giving me trouble. But there's no zoning here at all because I'm not going to zone here anyway. Here too, I can remove this zoning. Inside the roundabout here, I'm not going to zone either. So what I ended up doing was this. I was removing this zoning that's inside here. And that way, we were clearing the game's cache. Look at that, a lot of work. It was a really laborious task. Around the park, I also removed the zoning. You can see that on this side here, there's nothing, because I wasn't going to subdivide here either. And that also ended up freeing up space. Here in these corridors that we have inside the super blocks, all of them are also without subdivision. That freed up space. I was able to finish the suburb, and we still have 14% left for us to work with here. Our industrial zones, which will be in the 4 corners of this map. And another important thing to mention is that this last super block is missing a row of blocks here. Because you can see, after our central square, we have a commercial street here, a pedestrian street, and 2 more blocks. Here we have our pedestrian commercial street, and these 2 blocks here are missing. I had to remove a part of them here, especially because they would end up really close to the highway here, and I don't want that. And also, it helps us save on the number of zones, too. We gain this space here, this corridor right on the edge of our planned core, which will be used to lay a train track. My idea, I'm already giving you a sneak peek of the public transportation plan, is to have the train go all the way around the city's edge here. Because the train is for mass transportation. Distances. So it doesn't work very well in denser, central areas. That's why I'm gonna put it here on the edge of the city, and this space here came in handy. It's gonna be very helpful. Here is where we have our parks at the cardinal points. I extended the highway, and I've also started the crossing from one side to the other, along with the landscaping. Here I made an entrance and exit. Very simple. This avenue, it's the last avenue here in the suburbs, because after it, it's already the highway. And if this here keeps causing traffic problems, I'll remove it. And I'll leave the entrance only here in the Cardinal Parks, which have a bigger and better structure than this one. But I also put one here, a little arched bridge. It turned out cute. And we're going to get 4 more new entrances. One here at each cardinal point, one here in the south, one here in the east.
Uma aqui no norte e uma aqui no
west. In the next episodes, I'm already thinking about doing that. Working here on our industrial layout. Putting the services here that the city will need, and also already solve these entry issues. These entrances here, along with this issue here under the park, I need to connect these points here in a logical connection. We'll also work on this in the next ones. I think in the next episode already, all of this will be finished. The industrial part and the connections. Then I'll make the map available for you. I'll teach you how to open the map. You have to be subscribed to the mods. I'll teach you how to subscribe to these mods. And open everything correctly. When the map is ready, there's just a little bit left. Then we'll start working on our plans for public transportation and also waterways. That's what I plan to do here on this map. Canals, open here. Maybe connect these 2 rivers here from one side to the other, through a canal. Or canals, I think several canals. It would look really cool, it would add a level of challenge, it would make the city even more complex. And a bit more elegant too. When the city is well planned, a lot of things get better. We have less stress, a better quality of life, more sense of community. An example is Goiânia. Lots of parks, green areas, better quality of life. And besides that, less traffic, less pollution, more social interaction on the streets. The street stops being just a passageway and becomes a space for people to connect. But I need to warn about the risks of renewal. Not everything is perfect. The biggest danger is gentrification, when the neighborhood improves and the original residents can no longer afford to live there. It creates a big problem because these people will have to leave and they will obviously have to go somewhere. This will create new outlying neighborhoods, problematic ones. And that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. And that's what happened in Edge Hill in the United States. There was an attempt to revitalize the neighborhood, which ended up raising prices and pushing out the original population. Maravilha in Rio de Janeiro and the Vale do Anhangabaú in São Paulo. These are also revitalized areas, but with a focus on tourism and business, and not on affordable housing, which also raised issues of gentrification. How can we avoid these problems? We need to ensure affordable housing, control real estate speculation, include the population in planning, and plan with people, not just for them. The suburbs show one clear thing. Cities are a reflection of our choices. Overcoming the current model requires more than just engineering. It requires changing the way we think, what it means to live well. The ideal future is not made only of concrete and asphalt, but of connections, nature, and belonging. The good news is there are already examples showing that it is possible to do better. From Paris to Curitiba, the message is the same. It is possible to correct the mistakes of the past and build more humane cities. And in the end, it all comes down to this. Every street, every neighborhood, every city. It's about people. People trying to live better. Well, and that's how we wrap up this suburban area. And as a result, we finish up here. For the most part. At least 90% of the design of our master plan. The episodes of this series have been coming out every 2 weeks. But I want to tell you that from now on, it might take a little longer, about 20 to 30 days. Because as you know, it takes a lot of work to make this series. I'm really enjoying it, but I'm really struggling to find time. I don't make a living just from the channel. I have other professional obligations. And man, these first 5 episodes, although really cool, they brought excellent results for the channel, and I'm really grateful to you for that. But they've also given me a headache and almost burned me out. So I'm making my mental health a priority. But I'll keep doing it at their pace, recording, playing, researching, writing, editing, taking it easy until it's ready, without trying to meet a deadline. I hope you understand. If you made it all the way to the end, you deserve to know this. So that's it for this chat with you all. But I'm really excited to do a lot more things, to sketch out these industries, to make our transportation plan. I'm studying the waterways. Also to see if we can get a river to run through this city. Make some canals. I think it would look really cool and add a lot to the challenge. See? I keep making things harder for myself, but it turns out great in the end. We're in this together as always. A big hug, and see you next time with another video, another episode of Vale Central.